Welcome to the Red Med podcast, Rescue, Expedition and Disaster Medicine, where we provide a platform for healthcare professionals working in or aspiring to join rescue, expedition and disaster response teams. A platform to share information, advice and opportunities and connect like-minded Red Med individuals in our community. Good morning and welcome to episode 19 of the Red Med podcast, Rescue, Expedition and Disaster Medicine. As usual, I'm joined by the SOS Crew Chief, Chris Sharp. Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
We are again supported by SOS Coffee and Guatemalan Coffee, which we sell to fund medical missions for underserved communities and to fund free CPR and bleeding control courses across the country. We're sponsored by Life Systems who provide high-quality British-made remote area and adventure medical and safety products, from stocked personal adventure first aid kits to larger group first aid kits for mountain leaders, bothy bags and strobes. They've got it all. Hit them up on www.lifesystems.co.uk. As we're heading off into the jungle at the end of the month and the mountains after that, we thought we'd talk a little bit about foot care today and prevention being better than cure. By preparing and protecting your feet, it could mean the difference between having fun, achieving a goal, hitting the summit, or being in pain, losing toenails, getting infection, or even getting evacuated and losing a digit through frostbite. Hopefully you won't get frostbite in the jungle this time.
Hopefully not, no.
But there's a couple of core rules and a couple of things you can apply from the outset. Apologies to a lot of you. I understand I'm probably teaching you to suck eggs, but maybe there's people coming from urban environments that want to get into expeditions for the first time and haven't experienced mountaineering or buying boots for the first time. And this is really aimed at them to prevent the pain and misery and blisters and all that kind of thing. Learned through years and years of a military career on commando courses and SF courses, run ragged. We've tried things that didn't work, tried things that are now poo-pooed and classed as old-fashioned, tink bends, getting injected into blisters. But from the outset, the core principles are keep your feet clean and dry. Whether you go into a cold mountain, a desert or a jungle environment, your end goal at the end of the day should be to clean your feet, clean them well and dry them, and then have at least 6 to 8 hours in your sleeping bag, your tent or your hammock, with your feet airing off without your footwear on. Just let them breathe, increase the circulation, prevent the bacteria and fungi build up between your toes. So clean your feet at the end of the day. Whether you've got access to fresh running water or you need to use moist towelettes or antibacterial towels, alcohol wipes, make sure your feet are clean and dried. Maybe consider putting a light layer of dry powder across your feet. Certainly don't put loads on because that'll just cake around your feet and retain the moisture. But a little bit of powder helps to absorb the moisture, stop sweat and stop the build-up of any fungi or bacteria. Sandals are great if you're careful. If you're walking around a well-lit building, then sandals on allows you to walk around without hurting your feet, the soles of your feet, and allow your toes to breathe. However, there's a caveat to that. Walking around at night, you could probably stub your toe, break your toe, damage your toenail, which could be an expedition stopper. Or more importantly, you could get bitten by snakes, scorpions, spiders, which might not only stop your expedition, it could be life-threatening. So only walk around in sandals where you can see. Toenails, trim them. It's easy to forget on an expedition, but attention to the details really count for an awful lot. So keep your toenails nice and short, edges rounded, so they don't dig into the adjacent toenails and create sores and you start to get little infections. But the main thing is so you don't get boot bang coming downhill with big toenails banging into the front of the toe bed of your shoe that's just going to create pain and over time damage the nail bed. And before you know it, you've got painful, inflamed nails, probably get infected, might become loose, and then you're going to have minor surgery in the field to take it off. It will certainly be very painful. You might even get a subungual hematoma or build-up of blood and pressure under the nail. Easily managed with an 18-gauge needle and a delicate hand to drill through the nail and release the blood and release the pressure. The relief is incredible. It's almost like, I don't know, ketamine in the field. Just releasing that pain and the pressure from under the nail allows you to continue and serves as great local analgesia. You obviously got to clean it and cover it afterwards so you don't invite infection, but as a temporary stop and to prevent the build-up of pressure in your nail becoming loose, it can certainly help if the nail's in an experienced pair of hands.
Yes. Or you may have to do digital blocks.
Yeah. Footwear, you need to seek specialist advice, really, not just go to your local shoe shop and pick something off the shelf or order off Amazon. Hot environments, if you're in the desert, maybe specific lightweight desert boots that are breathable and allow moisture to evaporate and stop the moisture building up. Jungle environments or wet environments, ideally you want to have some sort of drainage eyelets so the water that builds up can just drain out and stops your feet becoming a soggy mess. Cold weather, depending on where you're going to and what the temperatures are, but you need to have insulated boots, whether they're standard leather boots or double layer plastic boots, or you've got insulated neoprene gaiters on the outside. It depends what altitude and what the temperature is, but you need to keep your feet warm in that environment. Tight boots are terrible. There's nothing worse. Tight boots, if they're too tight because you've selected the wrong size or your lacing system's wrong or you've got the wrong type of socks on or too many socks, they're going to create hot spots, cramps, pain, poor circulation. Poor circulation to the extremities in a cold environment can lead to frostbite and potentially the loss of the digit. Lacing system, just because there's an eyelet there doesn't mean the lace needs to go through it. Everybody's foot is slightly anatomically different, and unless the shoes are heat molded to the shape of your foot, they're probably not going to fit perfectly initially, and you're going to get sores, you're going to get rubs, you're going to get all sorts of chafing and potentially infection. So try the boots, lace them up so they're comfortable, go for a walk in them, walk on steep ground, walk on inclines, declines, walk with rucksacks. If you start to get any particular hot spots, take the lace out of a particular eyelet to release the pressure. Try that. Just play around with the lacing system. Maybe the laces come up the side instead of crossing over. Whatever to keep it nice and tight so the boot's not too tight, it's not loose and rubbing around creating friction, and there's no local hot spots.
And I know you mentioned jungle boots. Obviously, I'm off to the jungle again. One of the biggest, we're going to come on to problems in a minute. The word trench foot came from World War One. The guys in the trenches with leather boots, constantly underwater. Initially, it was mistaken as frostbite because it looked the same. But like the jungle boot, they are tight. You can't buy them off Amazon. You know yourself.
Yep.
They're probably the tightest boot of all. There's not a lot of give until they're really wet and broken in. But they were designed in Vietnam specifically to dry quickly. You're wet all the time, but they dry quicker than other boots. There's different makes. So boots is, we're the same. We've got boots for everything. Get them, try them, and then the way to break them in is you've got to wear them well before you go anywhere in them.
Yeah, wear them for 30 minutes around the house while you're watching TV, walking to put the kettle on and make a cup of coffee, then walk around your local housing estate, wear them for a day at work, and then start getting out and doing exercise in them. Go up hills, down hills, but break them in so they mould to the shape of your feet and it toughens your feet up where they're... But you may also identify hot spots, or you might identify the fact that the boots are too narrow or too wide and just not compatible with your feet. Better to take them back and change them before the exped instead of suffering the problems hundreds of miles away from help. Socks. As a general rule, your socks need to be as good as your boots and compatible with your boots to create comfort, support. They've got to be breathable to wick away the moisture, keep you nice and warm, and stop the boot from moving around or being too tight. Again, you need to seek specialist advice. Do you go for merino wool socks? Do you go for synthetic socks? Some of them provide better warmth. Some provide better wicking properties. But ideally, I like to wear in the mountains very, very thin liner socks, which will not only wick the moisture away from my feet, but also protect my feet from friction. And then a nice thick outer warm socks that are nice and fluffy, trap the warm air in there and prevent frostbite. And then the two layers of the socks will rub as opposed to the sock rubbing against your skin. But again, you've got to try it. Some systems that work for me might not work for you, Chris, and vice versa.
Because normally you're cold and high. I'm either sat in a helicopter cold or jungle. I kind of buy the thin lycra heavy sock, but I always buy brand new, so they've still got that tightness. They're not misshaped or anything. I literally go to the jungle every time with brand new socks, just so they're a lot tighter.
That's interesting you mentioned new because of the shape. Big mountain socks have generally got a good loft. The microfibers are nice and plump and they trap air and they fit your foot. But once you've worn them for 2 or 3 days, they start to compound and compress the fibers, not only trapping bacteria, but also they're looser, so your foot's able to move around more in the boot, creating friction, hot spots. But also, if there's no microfibers to trap the warm air, you're more susceptible to frostbite. So the best thing you can do is put a fresh pair of socks on every few days. And when you get to that stage where you know you don't have any fresh socks, go and wash them, if there's a way to wash them or dry them. Or just turn them inside out, put them on your hands like gloves, cover the sock in foot powder, and then rub your hands together to create friction. And not only will that plump up the fibres, but it will also get rid of some of the skin and the bacteria. And they'll be nice and new, good to go, ready to wear. Then, still on foot prep, if you're going for long treks, ultra marathons, search and rescue tasks, expeditions to high altitude mountains, and you know you're going to get hot spots, or you know you're going to get boot rub, or you want to prevent it. Prevention's always better than cure. Identify the hot spots, where your toes are going to rub together, where the toes are going to rub on the side of the boot, or your heel's going to rub on the back of the boot. And then you can put zinc oxide tape or very sticky, tough, fibrous tape over those weak areas, those vulnerable areas susceptible to friction. Prepare your tape after you've cleaned and dried your foot thoroughly. Prepare your strips of tape. Apply them very carefully so they slightly overlap, there's no gaps in the tape. Covering the hot spot by at least 1/2 inch either side if we're talking the heels or the base or the top of your foot. And then the trick is to place a nice warm hand over the top of the tape and keep it there for 5 or 10 minutes. That heat will just allow the tape to stick really well, softens the glue, allows the tape to stick really well and mould to the shape of your foot. And then you've got no loose edges of tape. If it's applied well, that tape will stay on your foot for days, if not weeks on an expedition. And the tough fibrous tape will absorb the friction of the socks or the boots moving, rather than your soft, delicate skin absorbing the friction and creating blisters. I used that on the 30 miler on the commando course, didn't have any blisters. I've used it numerous times on mountain treks. Great technique, but time spent in preparation is essential. If you just stick the tape on very quickly on a morning and it's not stuck or the edges aren't stuck down, it'll roll up, it'll curl up into a ball and start becoming a hot spot, a new hot spot, as well as exposing the flesh to friction and blisters.
And it is a very common military technique, so I think we're going to do a video at some stage this week just for the non-military, because for the military you live with your feet taped up most of the time. It's kind of weird.
Yeah.
Whereas the non-military background kind of civilian setting and be like, you tape your feet up. So picture paint's 1,000 words.
Absolutely. We'll show you how to tape up your heels and the toes, and we used to use it on our back and shoulders to prevent pressure sores, not so much pressure sores, but friction burns from the rucksack while we were running with heavy weights. But it's no different to CrossFitters taping up their hands before they do pull-ups.
Yeah.
It just adds an extra tough layer between the bar and the hands to protect your skin. So either in conjunction with that technique or as a standalone technique, you can also use petroleum gauze or Vaseline. Cover your feet, your heels, the base of your foot and between your toes with a fine layer of Vaseline, and that will allow your feet to slide slightly and the toes to rub between each other frictionless. And so hopefully at the end of the activity, instead of rubbing furiously, you've just had the surface sliding against each other, and it reduces the friction, and it's been a great blister prevention technique for me. Depending on how far you're going, depends on the quantity of Vaseline, and it might get absorbed in your socks. It's not a definitive solution. I've also put the tape on and then put the Vaseline on top and between my toes, and that works tremendously as well. Any other prevention strategies that we can use?
I think, like anything, is try what's best for you. It's like, I've never got on with 2 pairs of socks ever. I've just got weird feet that are born to live in boots. I do use Vaseline with jungle boots, particularly around my heels, because they're quite tight. It's quite a tight fitting boot. I think the key is practice. Normally, as soon as your boots get comfortable enough, that's the time that you need to buy a new pair because the soles have gone. For long distance expeditions, a lot of the running shops, where they pick specialist running shoes, they go and monitor how you walk, because you may need insoles, just like half cup insoles for your heel, just so you walk correctly in that boot platform.
Yeah, the insoles can change your gait or support an Achilles tendon injury. Or
yeah, because I had a pair of, I think it was Danas or something, and they came with like these half cups for your heel, and it was just such a difference. And it stops the outside of your boot, because obviously I must walk funny. It stops the outside of your heel wearing away, so your boots actually last longer. So now they are comfortable, you've still got a sole on them.
Yeah, if you've got any foot problems, any problems with your arches or your toes, or you've got particularly wide feet, or you've got Achilles tendon problems, you really can't just buy the boots off the shelf. You've got to go and seek specialist advice, whether it be from a doctor or go and see a boot shop that can actually monitor and measure your feet and potentially preheat the insoles and the liners of the boots, and then stick your feet in so the boot will mould to the shape of your foot. But time spent in preparation is seldom wasted. Buy the boots, test them, wear them, test them to death, make your adjustments, test them again, and if they're still uncomfortable, they're going to cripple you on an exped or an operation, so you better change them in advance instead of suffer the consequences miles away from home. Treatment, I think that's a whole new podcast, but in essence, prevention is better than cure. With these techniques, I've avoided blisters. The days that I haven't had the time, I've rushed out the door. I've suffered from hot spots, friction burns, blisters, and had them get infected, and it's really super painful. It can be a mission stopper, can get you pulled off a course or prevent you making the summit. So prevention is cure. But in the future, we'll do another podcast where we look at Compede, blister treatment and prevention, dressings, the Life Systems blister kits, which are complete. Do we puncture the blister and release the pressure and release the fluid, potentially inviting infection? Do we leave it intact to protect it from the environment but creating a hot spot and pressure? Do we use the old military style injecting tink bends, which is incredibly painful but it will dry the skin out and make the surface tougher? Anyway, that's a whole new podcast. So best of luck in your foot preparation. If you've got any questions for us, or if you've got any other techniques based on your experience, hit us up on the website or the Facebook platform. We'll be happy to feed it into everyone else.
Awesome. Shiny shoes, happy feet.
Fantastic. Have a great day, guys. Take care. Quick edit at the end there, guys. Apologies. At 15 minutes and 45 seconds, I said petroleum gauze. I should have said petroleum jelly. Hopefully that makes much more sense now. that you put petroleum jelly around your feet and in between your toes and not gauze.